Hey guys, Canuck here. More Course Design 101 here. And we are entering a very large and somewhat tricky topic, and we're going to talk about planting. We are going to talk about the basics of planting. I have tentatively planned an entire series coming up just on planting in terms of strategies, planting in different themes, planting different features, things like that. But today we're just going to do the basics. Planting is probably, the easiest thing. It's easy to pick up and plant trees and throw them all over the place, but it can be really hard to make things look natural. Okay, it's just something that you need to study kind of other people's courses, see what they've did, look at different techniques, and just practice. It's going to take a while for people to really nail down planting. Planting's probably the hardest thing for new designers to pick up right away, just because there's lots of different things. I'm going to try to show you as much as I can in this video. And like I said, I'm going to be going more in depth. At the end of Course Design 101, we're going to build a hole from scratch. So you're going to see a little bit more techniques there. And like I said, I'm going to be doing another tutorial series, hopefully, where I'm going to just focus on planting. All right, so also what we're going to talk about is the 3 bars on the top, the object bar, the memory bar, and the file size bar. So let's talk about the object bar first today. That's just straight up how many, whenever you're adding things to your course, that object meter goes up. We got to keep it under 100%. So the nice thing is, and something I suggest for new designers is, again, it really depends on the course you want. So let's just say for this, I want to do like a fairly heavily tree-lined kind of autumn style course. Okay, we're in the autumn theme. The autumn theme trees are good. Okay, I would try to use as many of those as I can to kind of get an idea or just kind of get started. And the nice thing about the auto-generated trees, if you go into the terrain settings, is if I add more trees like this, I've added a ton more. It actually doesn't touch the object bar at all. So you can auto-generate as many trees as you want. The object bar only matters with placed objects. Okay, same goes for plants, grass, and rocks. So what I recommend as a new designer, especially if you want a tree-lined area, is have some of these auto-generated trees already there. And what I like to do when I create holes is it kind of helps me see hole. Like I kind of see a corridor through there. I'm like, oh, there's a par 4 I could build, for example. So kind of having these trees here kind of gives me ideas of where I could potentially plant holes. So just an idea there. So let's start into planting some trees. Okay, so it's obviously real easy. You get the nice thing about planting is you have access to every single tree, bush, plant in the game from different themes. So if I want to put palm trees on this course, I can, which is cool. Now, this is where the memory bar kicks in. And this is the confusing thing. I've mentioned it on a couple of videos before how it works, but I will mention it again. If you add a tree or a bush or something that is not associated with this theme, so for example, this is the autumn theme, if I press Y right now where it says show theme objects, these are the trees that are in the theme. So if I were to, for example, plant the birch tree, watch the memory meter. It shouldn't move. It stays at 17.3. Okay? But for example, if I were to add a tree that was not in the theme already, like for example, pretty sure this ash tree isn't in here. Okay, watch the memory meter. It goes up a little bit. Okay, so each new unique object I add increases the object meter a bit. I'm not sure how, like that tree added about 0.4, that one added 0.2. Not sure what how the numbers correlate. But the nice thing is you don't have to worry about, once you've planted this tree, for example, you can plant as many of them as you like and it won't affect the memory meter. So you have to be careful. You can plant lots of different types of trees, bushes, and things from not from the theme, but don't go overboard, otherwise that memory meter will go up. Okay, it also gets affected if you plant things like houses and all that kind of stuff. So just keep that memory meter in mind. You go nuts with what trees and plants you want, but just keep in mind that memory meter and how much it can be affected. Okay. So let's just kind of start by planting trees. I'll show you kind of a cool feature, which I thought when it first was there, I thought it was a really cool feature until I saw how much of a dent it puts in the object meter. So this is going to save a lot of time for some people, but you have to be really careful with it. So let's say I really want a bunch of these aspen trees. I'm going to select one. Okay, and a new feature this year is the spline fill option over on the right there. So if I hit Y, it'll actually make me draw a spline. So if I wanted these trees along this side of the course, I could just draw myself a spline. But if you look, you see every point I'm putting down? Look how much it's adding to the object meter. That's quite substantial. Whoa. What happened there? Well, what happened there is I didn't close the spline properly. So let's redo that. So you actually have to close the spline. Now it's weird that it only added 3.1. And then if I do close this, you're going to notice it's actually going to add even more to the object meter, which I cannot figure out why this is the case, because more trees actually got planted in the other thing. So there we go. There's some tree-lined, again, some nice aspen trees. And again, you can select spline point, you can edit it, and you can change the fill amount. If you want more trees, you can increase it. But again, look at what it does to that object meter. That's 11.3%. That's over a tenth of my meter for tree lining one type of tree on one hole. Okay? Or you can knock it back down to a little bit less. Okay? You could also duplicate the spline fill if you wanted, and say maybe you wanted a certain type of bush to be underneath those trees. Let's say maybe we wanted a bush like this. It'll actually plant some bushes in the spline as well. Okay? Now, I'm just showing you this because it's kind of something I don't want you to use a lot. Okay? It's a nice handy thing to have, but if you use it extensively, you are going to run out of objects by the time you hit hole 10, probably. I don't know why it takes up so much object meter. It always has. Every time you multi-plant things, it seems to take up a lot more meter than just hand planting them one by one. I'm not sure why that's the case. It just is. So I'm just going to delete these. So I recommend only use the spline fill tool if you're doing some background planting, maybe way off in the distance. I would not rely on it too much around here, especially with trees. With grasses, maybe. Okay, so do like big patches of grass. It might be a good idea, but again, really be careful about the object meter. So some more things that you can do with planting. For example, let's talk about grass. So let's say I wanted to pick, some grass to lay down, patches of grass here. Okay, you can just plant one piece of grass. Okay, you can rotate it. Okay, you can make it real big. Okay, that's crazy. That's like Jurassic Park grass. If you were to stick your golfer there, he would be about this big. So keep in mind that. You don't want it to look silly. Okay, but if you click the left stick, you can turn on the multi-object. So here you can kind of multi-plant things. And you can use the D-pad to adjust how much is going in the fill amount, or you can adjust the size. Okay, so this is a very quick, easy way of planting lots of grass, for example. Okay, instead of doing one blade at a time. It's nice. Again, be careful with grass, because grass, if you do it too much, it will make that object meter tick up pretty quickly. What I've found, it's nice to have this object meter. I would try to keep your objects, probably each hole that you design, I wouldn't go any higher than about 5% a hole. Because you figure 18 times 5, that's about 90. That gives you an extra 10% to play with at the end. So if you're done a hole 1 and you're used 20% of your plant meter, you probably use too much. Okay? So again, you can multi-plant trees. if you want to. So again, you could do, instead of the spline fill, you could plant a whole bunch of trees like that. Okay. But again, I just kind of, I prefer doing them one at a time, okay, which is a little bit more slow and tedious. But if you want that natural look, that's what you're probably going to have to do. Okay. You can do the same thing with rocks. Rocks are probably the biggest contributor to multi-plant. Now you can make, you know, these tiny little rocks. Like I really like having little rocks, and if I multi-plant them, they look really neat. This one's actually not that good. Let's find. There we go. So like these look really cool, like along a shoreline. But again, if I'm watch how fast the object meter goes off when I click a whole bunch of these. I don't know why it plants a whole bunch and then it goes down. I'm not sure. But again, something you really got to be careful with your rocks. Okay, rocks, that's a cool look. But you don't want to be doing that all over your course because it will eat plant meter a lot. So that's a cool look that you can do with some rocks. What else? There's just so much to do. I just kind of really want to show you guys some basic things. So, and again, I will plant a hole when we do a part 3. I don't really like this hole to begin with, but we're gonna do a hole from scratch a little bit later. Okay, a couple kind of little tips and tricks I would say is if you want to do things like, let's just lay down a few trees first. So I'm just going to use a few theme trees, like let's use a few of these oak trees here. So when I'm planting, you know, different trees, I try not to plant them all in the same place with the exact same rotation. So what I like to do, if I'm planting a few of these trees, I'll plant one, and then the next one I'll maybe make a little bit bigger, spin it. Maybe I'll put one here, or bring it down, spin it again. Okay. I try to vary it as much as I can. Okay, and then maybe I'll add some sycamores here. I don't know. So again, rotate, size, rotate, size, rotate, size. Okay, all that stuff. Now I do understand people on consoles. Doing this on a console is way slower. Planting on consoles sucks. If you're really serious about design and you want to go really fast, PC is the way to go. It's just much, much faster. Okay, so if you want to do that, you can. Some other cool little tricks is you've got lots of bushes. Okay. Now, I don't really like the bush just kind of sitting here. You can create lots of different styles and looks of bush just by lowering it. So what if I lowered some of it into the ground? Maybe I spun it, brought it up. Now I have a whole bunch of different looks just with one different type of bush. Okay, so having it just kind of sticking up like this, I don't really love that look. I like it just kind of sunk in. Oh, just a little bit. That. Okay, but that's just me. And I kind of like to do this around tree trunks sometimes. Not with all of them, but it really depends on the course I want to do. So you know, just doing that, and then maybe I'll add in a few different plants. We'll do something like this. I plant in small little sections. Do some little test sections, see how it looks. Then again, you can always just delete them. Okay, and then let's say maybe I wanted to add a little bit of grass. Okay, again, I suggest using grass that's going to show up. Some grasses show up better than others. Okay, like these, so like from a distance. Okay, like something like they actually do a little bit better job than they used to of showing up. But some grasses don't show up as well as others, and I feel like it's kind of just wasted grass. But let's just say we want to plant some of this, a little bit more dead grass. Again, as you can see, that's about 1% plant meter used with just that. I multi-planted a lot of grass there. Okay, so you can kind of get some looks going like that. So I highly suggest sinking things in. You can even actually take entire trees if you want and say, oh, maybe I want, what would this ash tree look like if I sunk it all the way down? And then you can get a cool bush like that. Okay. Another neat little trick is if you sink a tree all the way down in an area where you haven't planted heavy rough, it'll make the ground a little bit more brown. Did I talk about this already? I can't remember if I did. I really should have gone back and looked. Okay, it works better in some themes than others. It works pretty good in this theme. That's another trick to do. You want to kind of make really brown out an area. Just sink the trees down. Okay. Now, if you really don't like something and you want to delete it, there's lots of different ways of deleting. You can select, for example, this is a multi-planted object, so you can select the cluster. You can break that cluster up if you want, or you can just straight delete it if you want. If I want to delete everything here, I would just select the object, hit delete. Oh, nope, that's not what I wanted to do. Hit the bush, hit multi-select, sorry. And then I just go to area delete, and then I can just make my circle really big, and then I can just delete everything. It's like a big eraser. Okay. And if you want to clear your auto-generated trees, we talked about this already, use this brush here. I realize this tutorial is a bit all over the place. It's just such a vast topic. I really just wanted to show you guys the basics today of planting. So my big tips would be, the spline fill is cool, but don't use it a ton because it eats up a lot of plant meter. And work in small patches and just really try to work on, maybe creating a natural look. I look at a lot of pictures, okay, of certain plantings and see, okay, could I emulate that in the designer? Sometimes it's easy to do, sometimes it's not, but I just recommend you really taking your time and just trying it out. Planting takes a while to get really good at, but with time and with some practice, you'll start to see some improvements. Is there anything else I wanted to show you with this? I'm trying to think. I think that was about it. So yeah, raising and lowering we talked about deleting. I think that's about it, guys. Oh yeah, and then just kind of making them big, making them small, rotating them, changing the size, just varying things up. Try different plant types. The look is really up to you, and this is where the real creativity of your golf course is going to come into the planting. The visuals are an important point. It's not the most important point. Obviously, you want a golf course that plays well. That's priority. But if you can get a golf course that plays well and is pretty, then you got a real gem on your hands. All right. Well, that's it for planting. Again, we will dive into it a lot more in future videos, but hopefully this at least gets you started and gives you a few little tips and tricks on how to get going planting your golf course. So we'll see you next time.